Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Wisdom Circle. It is February the 19th today. Holy cow. With all the snow on the ground, it feels like January 1st. It's a different day for me today. I'm just going to share vulnerably and I will have tears. Saturday, my husband decided to leave our marriage. And we both love each other very much. And we are best friends, but he wants something else in his life, which I'm not going to share about. That's his journey. And so my future suddenly got turned upside down. And I am so hurt and sad and shocked. But I'm also deeply grateful because this community is so powerful. And the support that I've felt and the love all around me and the way that people have showed up for me, including my children, and has been extraordinary. And I was actually surprised at how I was so shocked about it. I tend to put my head down and feel like I'm kind of walking alone a lot. And I was like, holy cow, what an amazing community I have. And how do I want to walk through this? Like this journey, like all journeys, has something to offer me. And one thing that I know is that true love does not cause suffering. When you love someone, if they come or they go, that doesn't cause suffering. Attachment does. Attachment causes suffering. And so I have been putting into practice the practices that we explore: meditation, inquiry, um, and taking care of myself. And I happened to have already been reading a book called Letting Go that was gifted to me by Michaela Condon a while back. And I would love to share a reading from this book this morning that's really relevant to me. And I hope that it's relevant for each of you this morning. So this is page 44 in Letting Go. One benefit from a life crisis is greater self-awareness. The situation is overwhelming and we're forced to stop all of our diversionary games, take a good look at our life situation, and reevaluate our beliefs, goals, values, and life direction. It is an opportunity to reevaluate and let go of guilt. It is also an opportunity for a total shift in attitude. Life crises, as we pass through them, confront us with polar opposites. Shall we hate or forgive that person? Shall we learn from this experience and grow, or resent it and become bitter? Do we choose to overlook the other person's shortcomings and our own, or instead do we resent and mentally attack them? Shall we withdraw from a similar situation in the future with greater fear, or shall we transcend this crisis and master it once and for all? Do we choose hope or discouragement? Can we use the experience as an opportunity to learn how to share, or shall we withdraw into a shell of fear and bitterness? Every emotional experience is an opportunity to go up or down. Which do we choose? That is the confrontation. Before I continue, I want to remind you that we have been exploring this in the Wednesday Wisdom Circle for a long time about intentionally choosing who you want to be in each moment. We are either a reaction or a creation. And so I have been at pause and saying, how do I want to move through this situation? Who do I want to be? What would my highest self have me do? And so I choose to explore this situation with patience and compassion and gratitude and grace for all parties. And believe it or not, extending that to myself is the harder part of it all, because it's not been a pattern of mine in the past. The pattern of mine has been to take on all the responsibility, put my head down and work. So here's the next piece of this reading. We have the opportunity to choose whether we want to hang on to or let go of emotional upsets. We can look at the cost of hanging on to them. Do we want to pay the price? Are we willing to accept the feelings? We can look at the benefits of letting go of them. The choice we make will determine our future. What kind of future do we want? Will we choose to be healed or will we become one of the walking wounded? In making this choice, it is well to look at the payoff we get from hanging on to the residuals of a painful experience. Boy, do we get a payoff from that, right? What are the satisfactions we're getting? How little are we willing to settle for? Anger, hatred, self pity, resentments, they all have their cheap little payoff, that little inner satisfaction. Let's not pretend that it's not there. There's a weird, quirky pleasure when we hang on to pain. It certainly satisfies our unconscious need for the alleviation of guilt through punishment. We get to feel miserable and rotten. The question then arises, but for how long? Take, for example, a man who had not spoken to his brother for 23 years. Neither of them could remember what the incident was about. It had been long forgotten. But they were in the habit of not speaking, and so for 23 years they paid the price of missing each other's company, affection, togetherness in family matters, and all the shared experiences and love they could have had. When the man learned about the mechanism of surrender, he began to let go of his feelings about his brother. Suddenly he broke out in tears of grief, realizing all that had been lost over the years. By forgiving his brother, he triggered a similar response in the brother, and the two were reunited. Then one of the brothers flashed back on the incident. It had been an argument over a pair of tennis shoes. It, over, uh, over one pair of tennis shoes, they had paid a price extending over 23 years. Had the man not learned the technique of letting go, he might well have gone to his grave with the same resentment. So the question is, how long do we want to go on suffering? When we are willing to give it up, when are we willing to give it up? And when is enough enough? The part of us that wants to cling to negative emotions is our smallness. It's the part of us that's mean, petty, selfish, competitive, cheap, conniving, mistrusting, vindictive, judgmental, diminished, weak, guilty, ashamed, and vain. It has little energy. It's depleting and demeaning and leads to the lowering of self respect. It is the small part of us that accounts for our own self hatred, unending guilt, and seeking for punishment, sickness, and disease. It is that part which we want to identify. It is the part we want. Is that the part we want to identify? Is that the part we want to energize? Is that the way we want to see ourselves? Because if that's the way we see ourselves, it's the way others will see us. The world can only see us as we see ourselves. Are we willing to pay those consequences? If we see ourselves as cheap and petty, it's unlikely we'll be at the top of anyone's list, whether in business or in life. So I had a friend who happens to be a counselor drop by the day after this happened. And I said, well, he mentioned to me, he said, oh, my wife, she comes to our yoga studio. He said, she just thinks the world of you and that you're so wise and that you're so like amazing how you walk through difficulty. And I took a pause and I took a breath and I said, this is why community is important because now in the time when all the difficulties arise and it's easier to walk a lower path, there are people that expect better than of me. And it's not for them, it's for me to live into that version of myself. But it was beautiful that he reflected to me that that is how I am seen. And therefore, now I have a true north to keep coming back to, if that makes sense. So it's not like for external validation, but it's helpful to have that reflected back to you and go, that is the version of myself that I want to be. So, before we get into meditation, I'd love for you to think about this concept that, pain is inevitable. Pain is inevitable. This is painful. Suffering is optional. Suffering is focusing on this shouldn't be happening. Why is this happening? Someone's doing something to me that they shouldn't be doing, or someone's not doing something they should be doing. Me perpetuating all of that story about it, that, my friends, is suffering. The pain will be there, and you can add suffering on top, a big side helping of suffering on top of your pain if you want, or you can sit in the raw pain and alleviate yourself of the suffering. And remember that this too shall pass. Suffering is not caused by love or people coming or going. It is caused by our attachment. And so I invite you to look at what are the things that you're attached to, how your relationships are, maybe how your life is. Like I'm going to have to consider if I stay in my home, and like there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm really looking at my attachments. What am I clinging to? Where am I drowning in my comfort zone? You know? And when I can identify what I'm attached to, I can start to loosen my grip on them. So a powerful inquiry for you would be to go like, who would I be if all my relationships dissolved? Who would I be if suddenly my financial circumstances changed, and or my living situation changed, or my job, I lost my job? What are you attached to that could potentially cause you suffering if you weren't to learn to let go? So let's move into meditation, and I encourage you to please find a tall spine to sit up with your sits bones rooted and your crown rising. And gently close your eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose. Then exhale slowly through your mouth. Take another deep breath in. And as you exhale, release any tension from your body. Allow your shoulders to drop. Let your hands rest gently in your lap. And allow your jaw to soften. Feel your breath flowing effortlessly in and out. Now picture yourself standing barefoot on a warm beach. There's golden, soft sand beneath your feet, and the rhythmic sound of the waves lapping up on the shore soothes your mind. The air is fresh, carrying a salty breeze that touches your skin. And before you, there's a beautiful sandcastle. You built it with care. You sculpted its towers, shaped its walls, you smoothed every surface, minded every detail. This castle represents something you've been holding on to: a relationship, an expectation, a version of yourself, or a fear of loss. Take a moment to observe the sandcastle. Notice all the details, the effort you've put into creating it, the way it stands proudly in the sunlight. Imagine placing your hands on your heart and asking yourself, what have I been afraid to let go of? Now, as you watch, a gentle tide begins to roll in. The water approaches slowly, touching the edges of your sandcastle, and you feel a sense of resistance. Maybe a part of you wants to shield it, to hold on to it, to protect it from dissolving. But deep down, you know the truth. You know that everything is temporary. Love is infinite, but attachment is fragile. Holding on to what must naturally change only creates suffering. The waves reach your castle, washing away the first layer, and you breathe in and you breathe out. Another wave comes, softening the walls, and you breathe in and you breathe out. With each breath, you surrender and you watch as the sandcastle returns to the earth, not as a loss, but as a release. The beauty was never in keeping it. The beauty was in the experience of having created it. Now, as the last of the sand emerges, as the last of the sand merges with the shore, you notice something. Your hands are still open. You're still here. Love remains. What is real can never be lost. You take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel light and free and unburdened. Now feel the steady rhythm of your breath, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the sensation of the ground beneath you. And silently repeat to yourself, I release attachment and embrace love in its purest form. I trust the natural flow of life. I am whole, complete, and free. Invite yourself to step forward with clarity and trust, embracing the temporary aspect of all of life, knowing that loving never causes suffering, only attachment does. Let today be a practice in holding love with open hands. And bring your attention back to your feet. Notice your shins, your calves, your knees, your thighs, your hips. Notice all of the organs in your torso, your rib cage flaring in and out, your chest rising and falling. Relax and notice your shoulders, your upper arms, your lower arms, your hands. Notice your neck, your jaw, lips, tongue, teeth, the crown of your head, and this whole body that you occupy, this whole temporary body. Can you fully just love yourself as you are and as you aren't in this moment, unattached to the past or the future? Take a deep, full breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. And then let your eyes flutter open. Mhm. Just let that sink in. And I would love for you to ponder for a moment. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I ask if you were to lose that one thing tomorrow? If you were to lose that one thing tomorrow, would you be devastated? And ask yourself what is the attachment to that? Maybe it's your partner or your home or your reputation or your job or whatever it is. And in that area, the first thing that pops into your mind, it's a beautiful place to start your inquiry around what am I attached to about that? What am I making that mean about my identity, like who I am? Because I'll tell you, I feel very blessed to have not got lost, like who I am in my marriage. We're both our own individual people, and I'm very proud of the way that I navigated my entire marriage. I was, faithful and kind, and I um, operated with integrity and learned to communicate, and I grew through that relationship. And I consider that a successful marriage. That's a successful marriage. I wouldn't do anything different. And why I know that I'm going to be okay is because I never did see another future. It is shocking for me, but I never lost myself in the story of he's my everything or this marriage is who I am. And so look in your life. I mean, I've done that in the past, folks. It's not like I I learned, but look in your life at like where you're identifying with that's who I am. And for a lot of us, it's our job titles or it's our or it's our partner, or it's like I'm a family, like I'm the head of my family, whatever that is. And if that was taken away from you, who would you be? Would it rock you to your core? These are just some ideas around where you can look now when the seas are calm at your attachments so that if a storm comes, you have a lifeline to let go of those attachments. So that's what I have for you today. And